Hello.
Hi,
Hi. I'm Ann Labar.
I'm Lisa Lancer Rose.
And this is
This Animal Life.
I'm going to tell a story. I don't always tell a story, but this is a story. And it has a lot to do with theory of mind and can animals deceive as well. That's more what I'm going to be talking about.
Ooh.
Can they be deceptive?
Yes, I love a good lie.
Yeah, So, but yeah, theory of mind. And, for listeners who don't know exactly what that is.
Which includes me.
Okay. It's being able to imagine that someone else can think like you do and what their thoughts probably are.
Okay, that's what I thought theory of mind was, like the ability to think another creature
Yes.
even
Yeah,
is having his or her own thoughts,
right. And trying to deduct sort of
what they might be.
chair squeaky there. Okay, I'm sitting still now. But yeah, and to imagine what their thoughts are.
You do need that to lie, to fool them. You have to think, I'm going to do this, and they'll think that,
Right. You do need that.
and I can do my own thing over here.
So it's like if someone is looking at you and they're trying to figure out what you're thinking, kind of thing. But yeah, just being aware of other minds and being able to imagine what the thoughts are.
And to behave accordingly to maximize your own self-interest.
Right. It's a very social, it's a very social tool, I guess. But we talk about it with children too, and children's development, like when they figure that out.
Okay.
When they develop a theory of mind, because it's not there right away.
Like that classic where the child has cake all over their face and they're like, I didn't eat the cake.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't imagine what you're seeing
Right.
then.
Right.
And yeah.
And that at some point too, I believe that, very small children don't see their parents as a separate being. Like you're all part of the same, which is kind of interesting. But I wonder if animals are like that sometimes.
Sure. There's a little bit of theory of mind in that. I remember this from when I was a kid, where I would say I didn't eat the cake, and they would say, "You're going to your room." Of course you did. And I think, but the only information they have is what I just gave them.
Ah, yeah.
So that's a limited theory.
Yeah, it's a limited theory of mind. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What else? How could they possibly know?
Right.
When as far as I know, they only know this much.
Right.
I've seen adults do that. Like I had a friend cheating. When people are cheating on their spouses,
yeah.
and they're trying to control the information that the spouse has, and the
Yeah.
spouse suspects them, and they get angry and say, and they're rehearsing like all the things they think the spouse knows. How can they suspect me?
Right.
That's so wrong. That's so unfair. That they think I'm a cheat. When they don't know, and they're forgetting, I don't know, body language.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that.
The subtle tells.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Which dogs have.
Yes.
When they know they've done something wrong. I mean, we're supposing it, but they kind of go, oh, the tail goes between the legs and the head goes down.
They know.
You caught me.
It's like somebody pooped in the house. I don't have to smell it.
Nope. All you can do is look at them.
Yeah, the dogs are like, oh, they're going to know. I'm going to be in trouble.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just knocked the garbage over and here they are.
Yep. And they give themselves away.
Yes,
That's fun, Anne. I love this stuff.
I do too. I love the reactions. It's just the best.
It is.
Well, my story has to do with an orangutan, and they do get experts involved, and it's quite interesting what they can't prove, um, but what their gut feelings say.
Okay, again with the gut feelings.
Yeah. Um, but we're talking a primate now, so it's a little easier to attribute like a higher level of intelligence, I guess. More abstract thinking, maybe they can do that.
Yes.
But one particular orangutan is Fu Manchu, and he lived from 1965 to 1983.
How did I
Um,
never hear of him?
Part of it, he lived in the Nebraska Zoo in Omaha. It was the Henry Dorley Zoo. He wasn't
Okay.
there the whole time, but he was there for quite some time. And the guy who was, I got most of this from a Radiolab, because most articles just say, "Wow, he was really cool, and this is when he died, and he had
Yeah.
300 grandchildren or whatever." Um, so the guy that the Radiolab people interview was his name was Jerry. He was in charge of the zookeepers. He was like the manager. And he said that one day some staff came running in. They're like, the orangutans are up in the trees by the elephant building.
What?
We don't know how they got out. So, because there's a moat. Like if you've been to the zoo, like the lions will be here, and then there's this big, deep concrete moat to keep you away
Right.
from the lions. And there's no water in it, but it's just a big concrete moat.
Okay.
Um, so there's at the bottom of this moat, there was a big metal door that led to the furnace room, and it was open. So they're like,
Oh,
"Oh, that's how he did it." But the door's always locked. So, everybody's getting in trouble. Like, well, somebody left the door open, somebody's going to get fired.
right.
Um, so everybody was like, "Oh, we'll double check. It'll never happen again. It'll never happen again." Um, and it didn't for
Okay.
about a week.
Oh.
And they were back up in the trees, and it would be Fu Manchu and like his lady and a couple elderly girls and this young teenager orangutan, and they'd be up top of the elm trees. um
Oh, I love them so much.
oh, I know, so funny. And so they just knew that they caught him at one point messing with the door.
Oh, okay.
So but they didn't see him opening. He was just messing with the door. He somehow got down there. Um, oh no, he did get it open. They saw him playing with the door, and he got it
Uh-huh.
open.
Okay.
And so they were able to catch him in time before he got out. And it's interesting, the zookeeper guy, the manager, Jerry, talks about like at the time he didn't even think about like he'd climb up the tree and like take him by the hand and lead him back. And he said, he never
Oh.
even thought about it. And he goes, "I got bit once in a while, but whatever." It's like, okay. So, they would take Fu Manchu by the hand and go, "Okay, pal, come on, we gotta go." Um, so but they didn't know how he did it. He got the door open. So there were some sticks around, even back in the 60s, I think they knew that primates use tools, certainly sticks to get ants out of a log or whatever.
Right.
Um, so they would clean the area every day so that there would be nothing that he could possibly use as a tool. And
Why they thought he was picking the lock with a
They
stick?
didn't know. They just, well, he's obviously doing something. So is there anything that he could use to maybe get the door open?
Okay.
Um, so one day they were working with the orangutans, probably like cleaning up or whatever. And Jerry saw a glint of light in Fu Manchu's mouth, kind of like a filling would glint. Um, so he went over, and this is Jerry, the one who's pulling him around by the hand. Went over and he pulled Fu Manchu's lip down. He pulled Fu Manchu's lip down, and there was a piece of wire that Fu Manchu had curved into a horseshoe shape so that he could hide it in his lip and it wrapped around his gum.
Wow.
It was shiny. It had obviously been used a lot. He'd had it for a while. So what he did, they watched him. Like he said, they went commando style. Like one of his employees was like, come on, come on. And they like crawled over the berm and they're like peeking down to see him. And he would take the wire and he'd slide it in between the door and the frame, wrap it around the little hook. He would wrap the hook around the latch and he would then lift it and open up the door and
Wow.
hide it again, put it in his mouth.
Wow.
Nobody taught him. He'd never seen anybody do anything like that. I mean, it's like the credit card trick in the movies, it's like,
More. It's some spy shit.
and he hid it
Yes, that's the thing. In his mouth.
because he knew they were going to take it away. You
Yes.
have to say they knew that he would, he had to hide
But
it.
even the mechanics of
Yeah.
crafting the device and then using the
Yes.
device.
And how did he make
figure
that
it out?
that connection? So when he got the door, what they would do, they figured it out. He would get the door open with this, hide his little tool again. They would walk, it was a furnace room. So they walked to the furnace room. There was a ladder that actually led up to a janitor's closet. So they would go up the ladder, go through the janitor's closet. They'd be in the lobby of this building. They just push the glass doors open. They were out.
Wow.
So, the serious question at the heart of that is deception.
Yes.
And if you're going to deceive someone, you have to be able to get into the mind of the one you're going to deceive. Like saying that Fu Manchu could do this, he'd be like, okay, I got to hide this because they'll take it away from me.
Yes.
And I don't want them to know how I'm doing. And
which he'd learned. It's either happened to him or he's seen it happen to others.
oh, he's had stuff taken away, I'm sure, like that makes sense.
Mhm.
And he would only do it when the keepers weren't usually there.
Right.
So they wouldn't see him. So he had down to hiding his tool, timing his escapes. But there's no scientific proof that animals can deceive. They can't prove it one way or the other. And the zookeeper guy, Jerry, said, you think you're so smart and that all animals are less intelligent. And then there's this guy. And he goes, I know people who can't open a door with a key.
That's great. I mean, the whole story reminds me of like Escape from Alcatraz or something. It's pretty
Like really
sophisticated.
it's planned. It's the whole,
Yes.
the Radiolab guys talked to a primatologist,
Oh.
Rob Shoemaker, who is at the Great Ape Trust in Iowa. And he studies the behavior and cognition of orangutans.
Oh.
And he said him picking the lock doesn't prove this theory of deception.
Okay.
Now they know he's planning and using tools and
But he was hiding the tool too.
right. But that doesn't prove it. Maybe he liked the taste of it. Maybe, like you could come up with all kinds of stuff. What?
I don't know.
Okay, so primatologist Rob Shoemaker.
Yes.
And he's saying that, just that the Fu Manchu had hidden it doesn't prove that there's deception involved. Because, who knows? Maybe he liked the feel of it, maybe he liked the taste of it. I mean, you can come up with other explanations. So it doesn't really prove it.
No, but there's the Occam's razor thing.
Exactly. There is that. So they asked him, he said, yeah, but what do you believe? Like, what do you think? If you had to, not as a scientist kind of thing.
That's a great question.
And he said, deep down, he has no doubt that it was deception, hiding tools, timing escapes. No one could catch him or see him, but there's no scientific proof. But he's convinced. He said, all you have to do is look them in the eye. And they're watching you, trying to figure you out.
They're watching you.
Yeah, there's obviously, I mean, it's a higher ape. We all know that orangutans especially are really smart, really
Well,
brilliant.
other really smart, really brilliant creatures have done likewise.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe not with escaping, but
Right.
with hiding food, for example.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It says orangutans are known for being extremely intelligent and for using simple tools for various tasks. Oh, and a great note. Well, one of the articles was just like, they had moved him to another zoo or whatever, and it's although his lock-picking days were over, Fu remained a happy, friendly guy who went on to have 20 children and 15 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Um, and he was transferred to the Gladys Porter Zoo in Brownsville, Texas in 1983, and he lived there. He passed away in 1992. He lived a really long
Wow.
time.
Nice.
Um, when he was still in Omaha, uh, let me see, let me find it here. Oh, here it is. Um, the American Association of Locksmiths heard about this and they made him an honorary member. So he had membership in the American Association of Locksmiths.
That's adorable.
Got a certificate and everything. They hung it up at the zoo.
Aw.
Yes, yes. But, just there's so that story is so complicated on so many different levels. The fact that he shaped the tool, that alone is huge.
But he shaped the tool in order to hide it. I mean,
Yes,
it was shaped for two purposes.
yes,
One was to pull the latch, and the other was to hide it in his lip.
right. And to hook it into his, yeah, so it wouldn't move around and he'd lose it. It would be hooked to the back of his gum.
He also fashioned it
Yes. And where'd
unseen,
he get it?
and he put it in his lip and removed it unseen for at least until they saw him.
So somebody had to drop it.
And he had to say, "Hey, I can use that.
Hey,
I've been studying that lock.
I'm
Just what I need."
yeah. And how did he figure that out? Because if he only saw it from the outside, he didn't know there was a latch that he would have to,
I was wondering about that. I was trying to picture it.
other than just like a person, you mess with it until it works. We don't know how long he was trying to get that door open.
He was a high drive orangutan.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
see, actually, the whole time you were telling the story, I was joyful every time they were out and they were in the
Oh,
trees,
yeah.
and he's there
Yeah.
with his girl and his buddies, and, you know, and they're up in the tree where they're happy, and
Yeah.
it made me wonder what their enclosure was like. It was
That's
obviously
true.
lacking something. I mean, it might just be lacking novelty.
I was just gonna say, it's just the same old trees, same old day,
You gotta get out.
orange to eat, it's just, yeah, gotta go somewhere.
Um, I was thinking too about stories I've read about, say, crows or
Oh,
squirrels.
yeah. Oh, squirrels too.
Yeah. Yeah, who are like, the other squirrels or the other crows are watching, and you're like, I'm hiding some
Oh, right,
nuts
right,
over
right,
here,"
right,
and they'll have like a fake hide,
right.
and then over here is the real stash.
Speaking of theory of mind, I sat and watched, we were in Africa, we were climbing Kilimanjaro, we were in camps, there were camps all over the place, and, I don't know how far up we were, but it wasn't the summit, it was one of the camps, and, they have ravens there, and they kinda have I'm trying to remember, they kinda, like, have a magpie coloring, they have a
Yeah,
white on their
okay.
wings, um, but there were 2, and there was, like, a bag, like, some trash. There was a bag of, like, Doritos, um, and it was open, and somebody had tossed it, and there was a raven a little not very far away, it was on the same rock, basically, but he was looking over in the other direction, and this other raven came up, and he'd look at the raven on the end of the rock. He wasn't looking, he'd take a step closer. He'd watch him, he's not moving, take a step closer. So he's sneaking up behind him, watching him the whole time, and he's heading toward that bag.
In order to hide, like, stealth requires a theory of mind. because you're trying to avoid another creature noticing and reacting to your behavior.
Right. But as a survival skill or even as a hunting skill,
Hmm.
they would argue, I think scientists and behavioralists and everybody would argue that that's hardwired.
How can you? Here's the thing about hardwiring. In my little world,
Instincts. Instincts.
yeah, grew up. I think we were taught this, that birds have an instinct for building a nest.
Okay, sure.
And then I had a flock of finches that I kept in an aviary. They had
Right.
lots of room, and I put little trees in there, and they had little nesting shelves and nesting
Right.
boxes and stuff. And I would give them the materials they needed to build the nest. And they did build a nest, the adult finches I had. And then they had young. And ooh, now what am I going to do? I have even more birds. So I was like, okay, I need a bigger aviary. Um, but anyway, I saw the little fledglings learn to fly
Sure.
and learn to find their place in the flock.
Right.
And then they mated.
Hmm.
They chose a mate, I should say, and they began their own nest building. And to my astonishment, they had no idea how to build a nest.
Really?
Yeah. Um, there was a great deal of trial and error, which was very charming to watch if you had the patience.
Yeah.
They would pick stuff up. They would try it in their mouth. They would manipulate it with their, and these are tiny finches, like
Oh,
they're like
yeah.
smaller than my thumb, you know, and um, they're chewing on it. They're picking it up and dropping it, picking it up and dropping it, bring it here, bring it there, trying to fly with it. Yeah, and then they would put it down, and they would make a really shitty nest. And they would try again, and I just remember thinking, how come you're not automatically good at this? How come there's
Yeah.
so much trial and error here?
Yeah. Hmm. That's a good
And it didn't
question.
occur to me at the time, they must have also been watching other birds and
Yes.
how they did.
Yes. And I'm sure that that's part of it. But that's a good point. I mean, I think that that's a hard line to draw,
Yeah.
even for us, because we have instincts as well. There's a lot of
Yes.
times we act before we even know we're acting. Um,
Um, but is that a reflex? Like, what's
well, is
we
that, I
have
mean,
other
it's a
kinds of
reflex,
terms here.
sure, but it's a protective move. Snake, fire, something
Do we
falling.
have an instinct for language?
Yes,
Because we will create a language if we're
that's
not
right.
taught one.
That's right. So there is that. Um, so that's an instinct.
Oh, and did you say fear of snakes?
Yeah, fear of snakes.
Hmm.
Um, because I mean, I Carl was jogging and there was a very large copperhead that he sort of leapt over. Um,
Wow.
but his text said something about there were a lot of sticks out, and I thought that he meant they weren't snakes, they were sticks. But he was just
Oh,
generalizing, saying there were a lot of snakes out.
yeah.
There were a lot of sticks. They were snakes. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That is a really because we had a bird, we had a cockatiel, and she would lay an egg and protect it. And we'd have to go in there and get it because it wasn't fertilized, it was just an egg. Um, and the minute that stimulus of that egg was gone,
Hmm.
she's back to normal.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
I I wonder, in theory of mind, we have a bias.
Oh, certainly. Oh,
We
yes.
obviously we've wanted to think, we've talked about this
Yeah.
before, you and I, on this show, but where we have a bias that we against granting certain levels of intellect to other
Right.
creatures. So in saying that's an instinct or that's a reflex in them,
Yes.
that's something we're checking. Not just you and me. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
the entire community
Right.
is checking for that now.
Yes. Yeah.
So on the one hand, we're going to grant occult powers.
Right. Because that's other. It's not dog. It's other. It's
Right.
obviously not the
Or it,
dog doing it. It's some outside force.
also, when he was Jim the Wonder Dog before he developed his supernatural powers. Um, but he was an aberration. Like, you
Yes.
can afford to grant
Okay. Right.
superpowers to this dog, or not superpowers, but extraordinary intelligence to
Right.
this dog, because clearly he's an aberration
Right.
because of his physical appearance. Just like, I suppose, we would attribute supernatural powers or extraordinary intelligence to people with cataracts, um,
Oh, yeah.
or epilepsy.
Yep. I had a friend who was very bipolar to the point of psychosis at times. And she was, you know, taking her medicine and doing what she was supposed to be doing. But she admitted to me that she was hearing music. And I said, "Well, is it pleasant?" And she said, "Actually, no, it's kind of creepy." I said, "Well, okay, you might want to tell somebody." I said, "But in the village, you would have been hearing the angels sing. It's you would have been the
Yes,
prophet. You would have, it's kind of how you frame it."
exactly.
Like,
I love that.
yeah,
Yes.
would have been the wise woman, not the psychotic.
Yeah. So much depends upon who's looking at you
Yes. Yeah.
and how they frame it. The thing about Jim the Wonder Dog and Clever Hans is how people talked about them,
Yes.
the story we told.
Hmm.
And in the case of Fu Manchu, is the story, is it complete,
Yeah.
or are we still deciding?
I think, well, the fact that they recently spoke to the primatologist, and they're still trying to prove that animals can deceive. And I know I've heard other stories of probably chimps, but even that example of the raven,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
I've heard it about birds.
so
Interesting. I have not, I cannot remember, I should say, coming across dogs deceiving. I'm sure there are stories of dogs deceiving. I would love to hear stories of
oh, we'll have to
dogs
go looking.
deceiving.
Oh, if anybody
Yes.
has one,
Yes.
please email. If your dog
Yeah.
has
Yeah. We're always talking about, are they our best friends? They're the only ones you can trust. Well,
uh,
is that really the true?
and if they're stealing your wallet, like I had a Boston who well, actually, the border collie would get stuff off the counter because he was a puppy and it was just, he could reach. So it was just a matter of like, there's something up there, I'll get it. And then the Boston would take it and hide it in her crate. So we found keys, we found a wallet in there.
Like a magpie.
Yeah,
Um, it's not, I mean, dogs steal food,
right, exactly.
right? But as anybody with a counter server knows, or that dog I used to have that would Pip would when nobody was looking, would unzip the children's backpacks
Yes,
and take their
those are
little
snacks.
Ziploc bag. Yeah, take their snacks out of their backpacks and then leave the scene of the crime. Um, that's different.
Yeah,
Like,
it is
I
different.
guess we're looking for modification of the environment so it looks like they weren't there. Or what am I
I don't
saying?
know. Are they lying?
Yeah,
Not stealing because animals steal. A lot of
which is a
animals
form
steal.
that involves theory of mind
I
too,
would think it would have to.
because you want that they'll see you and they'll react a certain way.
Right. We need to look more into this.
We do. We
We just
definitely
definitely
do.
do.
And I think we might be running out of time
We
here.
are. Um, so, yeah, if your pet lies to you, let us know. Email us at This Animal
Or
Life.
if you've seen any animal lie,
Yeah. Yeah.
deceive,
Yes.
or other examples of theory of mind where the animal clearly in its behavior shows that it's making assumptions about.
About you.
I never get tired of those stories.
I know, me too. Any form of deception, that would be really interesting. I bet birds do it.
You don't trust them.
Yeah, I don't trust birds.
Good. I love Fu Manchu. We'll have pictures of Fu Manchu. Please give us 4 and 5-star reviews as often as you can. Subscribe to our podcast. Follow our Facebook and our Instagram, because we cannot survive without you. These quantifiable statistics are our digital lifeblood. You guys, you got to go to our website right smack now, because we are proud to introduce Sarah K. Martin as our new graphic artist. She's got illustrations for every episode inspired by the episode, and they are adorable and funny and just overall wonderful. We are so delighted.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah, that was fun.
Oh! That's good. We're good. It's a wrap.